Hello, class. I did my informative speech on police brutality. On November 24, 2015, video footage from the camera of Officer Jason Van Dyke was released to the public. It showed him shooting Laquan McDonald in the back as he was walking away from him. Officer reports claim that he lunged at officers with a knife, but the video footage actually showed the complete opposite. He was walking away from the officer that murdered him. Eventually, Officer Van Dyke was found guilty in a court of law, and his fellow officers were fired, according to the newspaper Chicago Tribune on July 19, 2019. Today, I will reveal to you the social injustices of police brutality, and it's a sick and cruel product of systematic oppression and racism. The website thelawdictionary.org defines police brutality as the unnecessary and or excessive use of force against a civilian by the police. I will begin my speech by talking about the early history and accounts of police brutality. Second, I will talk about evidence that shows that minorities are the biggest victims of police brutality. Finally, I will talk about what is being done to address the social issue and the dangers of being a police officer in today's modern day society. The first organized police departments in the country were around the middle of the 19th century. According to the Smithsonian Magazine issue of July 2017, cities in the North realized that they needed a more effective regulation of the rapidly expanding populations. Boston, Massachusetts was actually the very first American city to create a police department in 1838. And after 1880, most of the large cities in the country had adopted police departments. According to The History of Policing in the United States by Dr. Harry Potter of Eastern Kentucky University, the commercial interest of the economic elite required a more orderly work and business environment, and social order was more important to them than crime control. The previously cited article, A History of Policing in the United States, also states that the exploitation of the working class and the control of local politicians also caused political tensions to rise. The first mention of the term police brutality was actually by the Chicago Tribune in 1872, according to the online encyclopedia wikipedia.org. Towards the end of the 19th century, worker unions and labor striking was becoming common in the United States, and they were the first mass incidents that involved police brutality. The previously cited source, wikipedia.org, states that police would use intense violence to break up those strikes. One of the biggest strikes in American history was the Great Railroad Strike of 1877, and around 100 people were killed. Now that I have discussed some history about police brutality, you will see evidence that shows that minorities are the biggest victims of this social issue. Investigations and studies have shown that police departments throughout the country continue to abuse minorities to this day. Unarmed African Americans in 2015 were killed 5 times as much as unarmed whites, according to Mapping Police Violence, an organization that reports on police brutality. 36% of unarmed individuals that were killed were African American, even though they only make up 13% of the U.S. population. 1 in 1,000 African Americans are expected to be killed by police in violent affairs, according to a Rutgers study by a sociologist by the name of Frank Edwards. The same study also showed that Latino men, black women, and Native American men that are killed by police are also at a higher rate than whites. Young men of any race are also the highest at risk for being killed by police violence. Now that I showed some statistics of police brutality, I will finally explain to you what is being done to address this social issue and the danger of being a police officer. Reducing police brutality is easier nowadays than in the past, but we must remember the dangers of being police officer. The online encyclopedia wikipedia.org states that many police departments in the United States are now using body cameras. The U.S. Department of Justice under the Obama administration gave $20 million so that police departments around the country can use these body cameras. Researchers in a case study that's titled The Effect of Police Body-Worn Cameras and Use of Force and Citizen Complaints Against the Police found that police officers actually use less force when they're wearing these body cameras and are being recorded. Police monitoring is also by civilians is also becoming more organized nowadays. Cop Watch is a community organization, and their mission is to reduce police harassment and brutality. They record and broadcast incidents that include like harassment or abuse, and they work with Berkeley's Civilian Review Board. ACLU of Northern California is also educating citizens about their constitutional rights with the Police Practices Project. The National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund concluded in their 2018 fatalities report that more officers for 2018 were killed by gun violence than by traffic incidents. 52 officers were killed by firearms, and that's a 13% increase from 2017. Before 2018, more officers would actually die in traffic incidents than gun violence. In 2018, the states with the most officer deaths were California, New York, Texas, and Florida. I will also show my visual aid. Here you can see a 2017 police violence report, and it shows that unarmed black people were actually more likely to be killed by police, more likely to be unarmed, and less likely to be threatening someone when killed. Okay. Today I have given you some insight to the social issue known as police brutality. First, I dove into the history of organized police departments and early accounts of police brutality. Then I showed you statistics that link police brutality and minorities. Finally, I discussed some things that are helping prevent police brutality and the main danger that police officers face. In the future, if you ever see a brutal police encounter, just remember that the civilian involved might have not deserved it. Thank you very much, and that concludes my speech.